All right. Public speaking secrets today. Ready for this?
Sounds good.
We're diving deep into Elmer Wheeler's Tested Public Speaking.
Classic.
Yeah, this book is seriously packed with advice that's, well, it's just as relevant now as it was back then. You know,
Absolutely.
connecting with your audience, making a message that sticks, and finding that extra something that makes people really want to listen.
It's amazing how Wheeler really breaks it down. The
Yeah.
art of persuasion,
Mhm.
gets to that core, what makes people tick.
Yeah.
And he does it with this fun, engaging style. You actually enjoy reading it.
Oh, yeah. It's not a dry textbook at all. One thing that really grabbed me was this idea of the sizzle.
Ah, the sizzle.
He says it's not enough to just have a steak. You got to have that something special that makes people crave it. He uses these great analogies like the tang in the cheese or the bubbles in the bottle.
It's so true. It's like he's tapping into like a fundamental part of us, human psychology.
Mhm.
We're drawn to the exciting stuff, the unexpected, the things that get our senses going.
It's about finding that heart of your message, that one thing that makes it memorable. And it's not about being flashy or gimmicky or anything.
Right.
It's got to be genuine.
Think about it. We're just bombarded with information constantly these days. To cut through all that noise, you need something, a reason to care, a reason to really listen.
You need that hook. He gives this great example about a speech to get rid of corrupt politicians. Instead of just talking about the problem, generally, the speaker hits them with this sizzle statement. Every single day these guys are in office, they're wasting $426 of your money.
Whoa, hits you right there.
Yeah.
It's not some abstract political thing anymore. It's personal. It's hitting people where it hurts, their wallets, and that's what makes it memorable.
It makes you think, oh, $426, that's real. That reminds me of when I was trying to get funding for this project at work. I kept getting lost in the details, all technical, and you could see people's eyes glazing over.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Totally. But then I remembered Wheeler's sizzle. So I shifted my focus. Instead of talking about the specs and stuff, I talked about how the project would help our clients, how it would fix this problem they'd been dealing with for years.
I bet that got their attention.
It totally did. It changed the whole energy. People were engaged, asking questions. It was like they finally understood what I was trying to do.
That's the power of the sizzle. It cuts through all the clutter and connects with people, on a deeper level.
Totally. Another thing that stood out was Wheeler's advice on how to start a speech. He says those first 10 seconds are crucial. You got to grab them right out of the gate.
You never get a second chance to make a first impression, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in public speaking, those first few moments, those are key. He uses some pretty intense examples, like starting a speech about reckless driving with, "One of you gentlemen will be killed, and 3 of you will be maimed for life by automobiles before the end of this year."
Oh, wow. Talk about attention grabbing.
Right. I mean, it's dramatic, but it's effective. But why does that kind of thing work? Isn't it a bit manipulative?
I don't think it's about manipulation. It's more about, understanding how our brains work. We react to things that feel urgent, relevant, and, potentially dangerous.
So starting with something that evokes those feelings, you're basically putting your audience on high alert, making them ready to listen.
Exactly. Think about it. When you're scrolling through social media, what makes you stop and pay attention? It's the posts that make you feel something. Amusement, curiosity, or even, a sense of urgency.
So that's what Wheeler's doing with those strong openings. He's creating that sizzle moment that breaks through and makes you want to listen.
It's also about establishing the stakes. By highlighting what could happen if you don't listen, you give people a reason to care, to really invest their time and energy in what you have to say.
It's like saying, hey, this matters. This could affect you. Powerful stuff. Okay, so once you have their attention, Wheeler says it's time to speak telegraphically.
Yes. Concise, impactful language. He uses this great analogy, serving your steak in mouth-sized pieces. Meaning, you got to break down complex ideas into digestible chunks.
Especially in today's world, right? People are used to getting information in bite-sized pieces, social media, short videos.
Attention spans are shorter than ever. You got to be able to get your point across quickly.
For sure. He gives a great example, a rapid-fire delivery of key points, like bank deposits in Blankville will go up by $350,000. 2,200 more men will be employed. Purchasing power will be enormously increased. You will all make more money.
Like a news bulletin. Each point hits hard and builds on the last. By the end, you get the message loud and clear.
It's a great technique when you're presenting data or making a persuasive argument.
Imagine you're in a meeting, pitching a new strategy. Instead of getting lost in the weeds, You deliver those key points. Bam, bam, bam. Impact undeniable.
Makes you sound like you know what you're talking about. And it leads right into the next thing, rehearsal.
Oh, Wheeler's big on this. Even experienced speakers need to practice, practice, practice. And he has some interesting advice about memorizing.
He actually suggests memorizing the whole speech and then forgetting it for a few days. I was skeptical about that one.
Sounds counterintuitive, right? But his logic is that memorizing can be mentally tiring. You want to be fresh for the actual speech. By stepping away, your mind can absorb everything. You avoid that over-rehearsed feeling.
Like when you're studying for a test, sometimes you just need to take a break, let your brain do its thing.
Exactly. And when it comes to practice, he says you got to do it out loud. Pay attention to your voice, and ideally, try it out on a real audience.
Even if it's just a few friends or colleagues, getting that feedback can be so helpful.
It helps you spot those parts where you might be losing people or where your message isn't clear.
It's like anything else, the more you practice, the more comfortable and confident you become. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Wheeler has strong opinions on things you should never do on stage, like drinking water.
The no water rule.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit extreme, but his reasoning is actually pretty insightful.
I was thinking, what if you're actually thirsty?
Right.
But he argues that even taking a sip can distract the audience, breaks your train of thought.
He even tells a story about being so focused on a speaker's water drinking that he completely missed what the speaker was saying. If Elmer Wheeler, the master of persuasion, can be thrown off by a sip of water, just imagine the impact it could have on a regular audience.
So maybe not totally ditch the water, but be mindful of those little habits, the things that can take the audience out of the moment.
Yeah, it's about control and composure, making
Right.
sure your message stays front and center. Funny you mentioned those little distractions because Wheeler actually has a whole section on like dealing with them.
Yeah.
He's got this story about a waiter, right, clumsily putting down water glasses during his speech. And instead of getting annoyed, he just stares at the waiter. Makes the guy all nervous. The audience is laughing.
So he's taking control, turning it into a positive.
Exactly. Shows confidence, composure. Crucial for any speaker. It kind of ties into this idea he has about being authentic, ditching the gimmicks. He was really against using fake voices or mannerisms. Just be yourself.
I love how he talks about kids,
Yeah.
how they can see right through fakeness. They appreciate a genuine approach.
Good reminder for all of us. People connect with someone who's real, relatable, not putting on an act.
For sure. Speaking of genuine, Wheeler has this technique for handling objections. It's called the power of why. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh, the why question. Simple, but powerful. He gives the example of like your wife wanting a new hat. Instead of arguing, just ask her why.
It's like you're making them think about their own reasoning, right?
Exactly. It works on a deeper level because it forces them to actually explain their reason.
Yeah.
Sometimes they realize their argument isn't so strong after all.
You're kind of nudging them towards a different perspective without being confrontational.
And anyone who's ever dealt with tough questions, pushback in a meeting, this is a lifesaver. Shifts the conversation without putting people on the defensive.
For sure. It's about understanding their side and then guiding them to a new way of seeing things.
Which brings us to another cool point he makes, building a unique personal brand, like a trademark. He compares it to people like, Teddy Roosevelt or Will Rogers. They were masters of creating an unforgettable image.
It's about those things that make you memorable, make you stand out. Doesn't have to be something huge, Could be a phrase, a way you tell stories, a certain gesture.
Think about it. What do people associate with you? Your passions, your quirks.
What makes you, you?
Exactly. And that circles back to Wheeler's emphasis on simple language. Clear, concise, no jargon.
He tells this funny story about a farm boy who didn't understand the phrase, look at yourself in the mirror. He only knew looking glass.
It just shows you that even common phrases can be confusing. Got to make your message accessible.
I think we all struggle with that, especially when we're passionate about something. We get caught up in the details, forget to make sure everyone's following along.
If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Classic quote. And for persuasion, clarity is everything.
Makes sense. So, talking about making a message resonate, Wheeler has this formula, he calls it the XYZ formula, for motivating an audience. It's all about appealing to self-preservation, romance, and money.
It's those core human motivations, right?
Yeah.
We want to feel safe, we crave connection, and yeah, we all want financial stability.
So by framing your argument around those things, you can make your message more persuasive.
It's not about manipulating people. It's understanding what drives them. connecting on a deeper level.
Speaking their language.
Exactly. Creating that aha moment where the audience goes, this is for me. This matters to my life.
And once you've got that connection, you can guide them to your conclusion. Which brings us to another technique Wheeler talks about, the Socratic method.
Persuasion through questioning. Subtle, but super effective. Leading people to your outcome without being pushy.
Like taking them on a journey of discovery.
He uses historical examples like Patrick Henry's "Give me liberty or give me death" speech. Masterfully use questions to get the audience fired up.
Really powerful stuff.
Imagine trying to convince your friend to try a new restaurant. Instead of listing reasons, you ask them questions that make them curious.
So they end up wanting to go.
And they think it was their own decision. Even more likely to actually go.
Clever. Wheeler does warn about some pitfalls, though, right? Like, you don't want to sound accusatory or challenging. That'll just put people on the defensive.
It's a dialogue, not an interrogation.
Right. And he also talks about body language when asking questions. You know, using open gestures, not pointing fingers. That can come across as aggressive.
It's about creating a safe space for people to explore ideas. And that ties back to his advice on structuring speeches to keep the audience engaged. Starting strong, grabbing their attention in those first few seconds.
The let the audience sniff the sizzle principle.
Remember those dramatic openings we talked about,
Yeah.
like the reckless driving one of you gentlemen will be killed. That's sniffing the sizzle right there.
Creating that urgency, that relevance.
And he also warns against using humor that might, undermine the seriousness of your message, especially at the beginning. Hamburgers can't sizzle. Got to serve up the steak, the most captivating part of your topic, right away.
Right from the start. He also talks about being aware of the audience's time. No rambling or going off on tangents. He compares it to speaking telegraphically, concise and to the point, just like a telegram.
Which brings us back to that example. Bank deposits in Blankville will go up by $350,000. 2,200 more men will be employed. Purchasing power will be enormously increased. You will all make more money. Bam, bam, bam. Key points delivered quickly and effectively.
Perfect for when you're presenting complex info or when you're short on time.
It makes you think about how you use language. Are you being clear, getting to the point, or are you getting bogged down in unnecessary details?
Something to think about.
Wheeler also says not to overload the audience with too much info at once. Don't be a hash thinker, he says. Stick to one point. Focus on one key message. Support it with clear examples, stories, rather than trying to cover everything.
Less is more, right?
He even suggests structuring a speech like a meal. Appetizer, main course, dessert.
I like that. So the attention-grabbing opening is the appetizer, the core message is the main course, and the memorable closing is the dessert.
Exactly. Makes it easier to create a satisfying and impactful presentation.
Speaking of dessert, Wheeler's a big believer in ending your speeches with a strong close.
Remember the dessert, he says. The closing should be just as impactful as the opening.
You don't want to just fade out. Summarize your points, restate your call to action, leave them with something to ponder.
And avoid those weak closings like, well, that's all I have to say. Or, I guess that's it. Makes you sound unsure.
Like you're running out of steam.
And with a bang. Leave them wanting more.
So we've talked about the content, the structure of speeches, but Wheeler also recognizes the importance of the speaker's personality, their authenticity.
He has a whole chapter on trademarking yourself, developing those unique elements that make you memorable, help you stand out.
He tells the story about Uncle Joe Cannon, this politician who used to carry hayseeds in his pocket. He'd sprinkle them on the floor during his speeches.
A reminder of his farming roots.
Exactly. Simple but effective. He also mentions people like Teddy Roosevelt, known for his energy and his Rough Rider look, and Will Rogers with his folksy humor, his ability to connect with everyday people.
Masters of personal branding.
Right, and he encourages readers to think about their own traits, experiences, what makes them unique. Find ways to incorporate those things into their speeches.
What are your passions, your quirks? What stories can you tell that will resonate? Find your voice and let it shine.
He even suggests developing a signature phrase, a gesture, something that becomes uniquely yours.
Your personal sizzle makes you unforgettable. But don't try too hard. Be authentic. Let your personality come through naturally. Have fun with it.
It shouldn't feel forced.
And that leads to another point he makes about being aware of social etiquette. Don't do things that might offend your audience.
Right. He says don't wear false whiskers, meaning avoid fake voices, mannerisms that don't feel genuine.
Don't try to imitate your audience's dialect or use slang you're not comfortable with.
it comes across as, well, fake.
Don't be too formal or stiff either.
Find that balance between professionalism and being real.
He even suggests watching children, because they're great at spotting fakeness. Always a good reminder to be mindful of how we're presenting ourselves.
Strive for that genuine connection.
And this brings us to those unexpected moments when things don't go as planned. Distractions.
Oh yeah, the microphone messes up, someone's late, tough questions from the audience.
Exactly. Wheeler says, stay calm, use humor, think quickly, turn it into a positive.
Like that story about the waiter with the water glasses.
Perfect example. He uses the situation to his advantage. Don't ignore distractions, he says. It makes you look like you're not in control.
Acknowledge it, address it, move on.
He even says, incorporate it into your speech. Make a joke, tell a story.
Be adaptable, think on your feet, turn those challenges into opportunities.
Which brings us to another point, staying calm under pressure. Those moments when you feel like you're losing control, the audience is restless, you're doubting yourself.
We've all been there.
Wheeler says, relax, visualize. He compares it to watching a panther when it's annoyed. It doesn't immediately attack like a lion. It paces, yawns, stretches, then finally charges.
So take a step back. Assess the situation. Respond strategically.
Maintain your composure, even when things are going wrong. Especially when dealing with those difficult audience members. The disruptive ones, the argumentative ones, the rude ones.
We all met them.
Don't get drawn into arguments, Wheeler says. Stay professional, even when they're being provocative.
Focus on your message.
And use humor to diffuse the tension, if it's appropriate.
It's about staying in control, not letting their negativity throw you off.
And this brings us to a broader point about public speaking. It's not just about giving speeches. It's about effective communication in all areas of life.
Being a good listener, asking questions, responding thoughtfully.
Think about what the other person is saying, not just your own response.
Build rapport, find common ground, engage in a dialogue, even when you disagree.
Don't interrupt. Don't talk over people.
Show respect.
These principles apply everywhere. Presentations, conversations with colleagues, even trying to convince your friend to try that new restaurant.
It's about being mindful of how we use language, how we present ourselves, how we interact.
It's what makes Wheeler's book so relevant, even today. It's not just about public speaking. It's about the art of communication itself.
And in today's world, those skills are more important than ever.
So we've covered a lot, but there's one last piece of advice from Wheeler that I want to mention.
Okay, what is it?
He says, showmanship is the difference between a flop and a hit. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be flashy or over the top.
Not a circus act.
Right. But it does mean thinking about how you can use subtle techniques to make your delivery more impactful.
He talks about showmanship being like adding flowers to your words, those extra touches that make your message more beautiful, memorable.
Like the Electrolux vacuum cleaner salesman. They'd start their pitch by saying, it burns as silently as a match. Then they'd strike a match right in front of the customer.
Simple, but it gets your attention. And it shows you the key selling point. It's quiet.
He also says to synchronize your showmanship with your words. Don't give the audience something to watch while you're talking. And when you do want them to watch, stop talking and let the visual do its thing.
Use showmanship strategically.
And he talks about projecting your voice, making sure everyone can hear you.
He paints this funny picture of a bored reporter in the back row, stuck covering your speech instead of the murder he was hoping for.
Gotta go grab everyone's attention. And he gives some great advice on using visuals effectively.
Like that story about the businessman trying to get a newspaper tycoon to invest in his cold cream company. He brought charts and graphs to the meeting, but the tycoon wasn't impressed.
But the next time, he brought a suitcase full of jars of competing cold creams, each one with a tag highlighting the advantages of his product. The tycoon was hooked and ended up investing.
Visuals tell a story. Make your message more persuasive.
Speaking of stories, Wheeler's big on using anecdotes, real-life examples. He says statistics can be dry, but a good story brings those numbers to life.
Makes them relatable.
And he talks about projecting confidence, authority, even when you're nervous.
Something we all struggle with.
He gives tips like standing tall, eye contact, using a strong voice.
Pay attention to your posture, your clothes. Look and feel confident.
Find those friendly faces in the audience. Focus on them. Don't let the bored ones get to you.
Create that positive energy.
And he talks about handling those moments when things go wrong.
The microphone dies. Someone's late.
Stay calm, he says. Use humor. Think fast.
Be prepared. Think about those distractions in advance, how to address them smoothly.
Be adaptable, resourceful. Turn those challenges into opportunities to connect with your audience.
Yeah. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Good advice, especially for public speaking.
For sure. And it kind of goes with what Wheeler says about, being authentic, being yourself.
He's all about that, finding your own voice, letting your personality come through.
Audiences can tell when you're faking it. Trying to be someone you're not just hurts your credibility.
He even says, don't be a tin god to your audience. Be a human being. Be relatable, approachable, genuine.
And that's good advice for life in general, not just public speaking. Whether it's with colleagues, friends, family, being authentic builds trust.
Makes you more likable. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from this book.
Yeah, I agree. It's finding that balance, professionalism and personality, being prepared, but also adaptable, having a plan, but being open to the unexpected.
And remembering that, at its core, public speaking is about connecting, sharing your ideas and making a difference.
Wheeler definitely got that. And he gave us the tools to do it well, with confidence and, of course, a little sizzle.
So let's bring it back to that core concept, the sizzle. How can we use that to make our communication more impactful, in all areas of life?
Find that thing that makes your message stand out, grabs people's attention, and makes them want to hear more.
A good story, a question that makes them think, a demonstration that brings your ideas to life.
Be mindful of how you use language, how you structure your thoughts, how you present yourself.
And be authentic, engaging, and most importantly, have fun.
Relax your way to success. Embrace those unexpected moments. Let your charisma and enthusiasm shine.
Love it. And one last reminder, folks, ditch the water glass on stage.
We'll be back next time with another deep dive into the world of knowledge and ideas.
Until then, happy speaking.